Ukraine has agreed to hold talks with Russia at the country's border with Belarus. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy made a statement on Sunday. He had earlier rejected Russia's offer to hold talks in Belarus, suggesting alternative locations.
Олександр Лукашенко звернувся до мене, щоб українська
Alexander Lukashenko called for a meeting of the Ukrainian and Russian delegations on the Pripyat River. I emphasize without any conditions. I would say frankly, as always, I do not really believe in the outcome of this meeting, but let them try.
On Friday, both sides expressed a willingness to negotiate, but Ukraine backed off, saying Russia's preconditions for the talks were unacceptable. On Sunday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said he's put the country's deterrence forces, which include the use of nuclear weapons, on high alert. He said senior officials of key NATO member states had issued aggressive statements against Russia.
Dear colleagues, you see that not only are the Western countries engaged in unfriendly actions towards our country in the economic field, I'm talking about the illegitimate sanctions everyone knows about very well. But the top NATO member countries' officials allow themselves aggressive statements towards our country as well. That's why I'm ordering the defense minister and chief of the general staff to switch the Russian army's deterrent forces onto a high alert mode of combat standby duty.
Russian President Putin's statement comes after US President Joe Biden elaborated on his two options on Russia, namely sanctions and war. Here's what Biden had to say.
You have two options: start a third world war, go to war with Russia physically, or two, make sure that a country that acts so contrary to international law ends up paying a price for having done it.
The United States and NATO are calling Russia's move to put its deterrence force on alert, quote, dangerous and unacceptable. The White House said Russia was responding to an imaginary threat, with Russia repeatedly condemning the West of ignoring its key security concerns. The European Union has announced a series of measures on Russia, including financial sanctions and closing its airspace to Russian flights. Ross Cullen has more details from Paris.
There's been an increase as the days have gone on with these meetings of EU foreign ministers, EU finance ministers agreeing on a different sanctions package, and every time they have agreed on a sanctions package it has been deeper and tighter, placing some restrictions on the Russian central bank. That's the latest moves that we've seen with these two sanctions packages. We could well see that sanctions package agreed on Monday, very early this coming week, if EU foreign and finance ministers can agree on the next package. That's the overall European Union position, but there are interesting specific national positions. We have seen Germany has had a long holdout when it comes to its long-held tradition of not exporting lethal weapons to conflict zones. Well, that has changed. Also, Germany didn't want any sanction that could impact Nord Stream 2, the pipeline bringing gas from Russia to Germany. Well, we heard earlier, a few days ago, that position was changed. So Germany carrying out these U-turns as well. It was one of the last holdouts for that SWIFT. France saying it's going to be closing its airspace to Russian aircraft Sunday evening. And we have already seen many European Union and non-EU states closing their airspace to Russian aircraft. One Aeroflot plane was en route to Belgium. Brussels closing its airspace, so it had to do an about turn and head back to Russia. So that is something that is taking place state by state. We're seeing more of them hour by hour saying that they'll be closing their airspace to Russian aircraft. So that is one such move that is taking place kind of organically over the last 48 hours or so.
In another development, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced export restrictions and sanctions on Belarus for facilitating Russia's military operation in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia's central bank says it has sufficient resources to stabilize the financial sector and secure its operations. This follows the move by the US and some European countries to exclude some Russian banks from the SWIFT payment system as part of sanctions for Moscow's military operations in Ukraine. The Russian central bank said in case of any scenarios, money transfers within the country are guaranteed by the country's own financial system equivalent to SWIFT. Russia developed its own payment transfer system called SPFS in 2014. It has 23 foreign banks connected to it. Russia's Sputnik news agency said in a report last year that the use of the SPFS doubled in the year 2020 compared to a year earlier, and that the proportion of domestic users reached over 20%.